Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com. And as you can see here, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, and Rabbi, I'm having a lot of fun with all three assignments. I'm writing in the Jewish Press about how government relates to the Jewish community, or it doesn't, as the case may be. And someone who I think does relate well to the Jewish community is our guest today, Laura Ladd Bierman, from the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of New York State,
Right.
not just the local,
Right.
the whole state. So welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
great
you.
to have you
Yeah,
here.
it's good to be here
I've been
today.
wanting to have a conversation with you for a while now.
Great.
So tell
Mark,
us.
can I ask you
Yeah,
even a basic
yeah,
question?
yeah.
Sure.
You know, in my U.S. history, I hate to say how many years ago, the woman got the vote. I don't know which amendment it is, Brian, you can tell me, with 1912, 1913, 14?
Well, you're going to hear a lot about that in the next 4 years.
Why is that?
Because we are organizing many activities for the next few years. Because actually in New York State, women got the right to vote in 1917. So starting in January, you're going to see lots of activity around the state, celebrations
100
on
years.
women getting the vote 100 years ago. The League in New York State was then founded in 1919. So we have 100 years in 2019, so we're going to have all
You have
kinds
2
of...
years to have a
Nope,
party
and we're
over
not
here.
done yet, because
Oh, really?
then the women got the right to vote nationwide. The 19th Amendment was actually ratified in 1920.
All right.
So in 1920, there'll be more nationwide celebrations, as well as the League of Women Voters of the United States was created in 1920.
We've got 3 years of partying.
So we've
over
got a
here.
lot of activities, a lot of planning
Well,
undergoing right
You
now.
really should figure out something for that happened in 1918 that would be.
I think that gives us time to breathe and
breathe?
plan again
Okay.
for 19 and 20.
Yeah, okay, well,
But you know,
fine.
my question then is just, again, obviously, like you're saying, it's 100 years old. What are the issues today? I mean, the women have, of course, for 100 years, obviously
Sure.
the right to vote. So
Okay.
what's,
Well, first, let's backtrack a minute,
Yeah.
because the League of Women Voters was created in 1919 and then in 1920 nationwide to educate women on how to vote. We like to kind of joke a little bit and say so that women could go vote without necessarily listening to their husbands. They would know how to do it and wouldn't have to be reliant on information from their family. Elections continue to be an important part of the League of Women Voters activities. Since the 70s, around 73, I believe it is, we have accepted men as members of the League of Women Voters. However, we don't change our name because our name has such credibility and people know our name that
That's interesting.
we keep the name, but we are open to any individual 16 years and over as members.
And Planned Parenthood, which you would think would be women's issues, has men in leadership.
Right. Well,
So-
we do too. There are local
Right,
league
and you do
chapters who
also.
have presidents that are men.
Right.
We've had men on the national board. We've had men on the state board.
So do you feel like the men are invading the women's territory?
Absolutely
I'm
not.
just
We
joking.
welcome
Can I
them.
joke this? Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
but you
Sure.
know, I think that's really important once you say that. So I never knew that. Maybe our viewers didn't know it either, I'm sure. But
No.
you know, we're on the Jewish View. And just really from all my friends, it was just because, you know, people came from Europe, our grandparents, and they were second-class citizens, and they didn't have a right to vote for.
Right.
It was drummed in our heads, you go vote. You know, now
Right.
you're in the United States of America, we're in a free country, we're equal citizens, you go vote. And Jewish people have known, you know, the statistics to vote. And it breaks my heart, really, when, I'll tell you the truth, when they say 50%, I don't know what it
I
is.
brought
and-
the statistics
all right,
for
I'd
you.
like to hear it because it bothers me, you know, because I just appreciate, you know, the right to vote because it was drummed in my head
Sure,
from my
sure.
grandparents, and then people just flippantly, oh, I don't care about
Well,
what's
and that's
happening.
what, I like to say there's three things the league does, and one of them is what we call our voter service activities. And those go back to our roots of providing an educated electorate. We want to make sure that not only are we getting everyone who can vote voting, but we want to make sure they're educated when they go to vote. So that's one of our main missions and what all of us are always working on. In New York State, there's 51 local leagues across New York State. And so all of those local leagues are working They've been working for the past months, and they've got about another month until October 14th to register as many people as they can for this election. And then we are also working a lot on what we call the get out the vote. Actually, New York State does pretty well in getting people registered to vote. The problem is then they don't go vote. And I can tell you, in 2012, the last presidential election,
Right.
53% in New York State, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
You think
For
that's
New
good?
York
I think it's
State.
terrible.
Okay, well, wait then. In 2014, the general election, which included the governor race, AG, and comptroller race,
Right.
28% voted.
Everything's comparative, I guess.
In that race, only Indiana had a lower turnout than us nationwide.
And now their governor's running for vice president.
Yes, that's true.
But I just want.
And the June primary, just one more I have, is in the June primary that we just held for the congressional primaries were held in June.
Yeah.
We were the second lowest. Only Louisiana had a lower turnout.
What percentage?
I don't have the percentage
Okay.
on that one, but only Louisiana was lower.
You know,
on
it's
the-
funny because New York spends so much time in education, and it also bothers me, one of my pet peeves, because, you know, you've put so much money, and we have all the politician government, literally billions, I mean, it's major, major money, how much taxes we raise for schools, and it's just like the kids come out ignorant. I mean, I don't know, saying that 2 + 2 = 4, but to me, that's an ignorance. You're not prepared to participate in the government. I mean, to me,
Well,
that's like
there is-
illiteracy.
There is there is a statewide requirement for that participation in government class. So all high school students have to take that participation in government. However, each school district is allowed to develop the curriculum. So some of them develop it more issue-based, some of it develop more kind of what we would call civics-based, some of them do it different ways. Now, many of our local leagues are going into those classes and providing, we have a document called First Vote that is given to many seniors from the, many of our local leagues are giving them out in classes for the seniors. The other place we're giving these out is at naturalization ceremonies. We are at many naturalization ceremonies statewide, and this is a document we give out, as well as the voter registration form and absentee ballot application and other information. But this is a great document for first-time voters in New York State.
So let me ask you a couple of questions here. One is, what do you call it when you choose a party? What blank?
Party affiliation.
And you blank to vote. Do you register or enroll in a party?
Well, I don't know that
I was
the terminology matters that much.
I was told you register to vote, but you enroll in a party.
Okay,
And
I'm not
people-
sure I can
and
answer
people-
that.
And people use register in a party interchangeably with register to vote. And and every time I hear that, I tell people, you enroll in a party, you register to vote. I just didn't know
I
if that
think,
was.
I don't know, that's just kind of
That's
the
Mark's the
semantics.
newspaper
Yeah, I'm not
reporter.
sure
Every
about,
word's got-
I mean,
used to
on the
work
voter,
I used to work in a political party, and the chairman
yeah.
drummed it in my head.
Well, I bet
Because-
people
so-
would use it interchangeably, but there may be a real difference, and I
Yeah.
don't know. But,
Okay.
you know, on the voter
I'm here to tell you,
registration
yeah,
form,
right.
you know, in New York State, we have about maybe 8 parties listed.
Right.
We have so many parties people can roll in. And one of the things the league was helpful in doing is now we made it very clear, no party is an option as well.
Not independent.
Not independent, because that got confused, because in New York State, we have an independence party,
Right.
and people would check that thinking they were independent. And
Right.
so now we have actually on the voter registration form a box you can check that says no party.
Okay.
So,
They're party poopers.
so that's one of the,
So now, when you talk about the League of Women Voters across the country,
yes,
I saw on the website, you call it the National League.
the National League or.
You don't call it American, you don't have an American league? You just have a
No.
National
No,
league?
We have a National
You-
League,
do you-
or
is
League
this
of
a
Women Voters
baseball?
of the United States is
Okay.
the formal title.
Oh, that's good, because
Yeah.
I was thinking you're partial on baseball, maybe.
No,
Okay.
no,
You're a Mets fan, not a Yankees fan. maybe.
Actually, I'm a Cubs fan.
You're a
but-
Cubs fan,
really?
National League, there you go,
Yeah.
okay. He's from Chicago.
We lived out there for 10 years, so,
There you go.
yeah.
That's the right place.
Okay, now this year, in 2016, we had, 6 elections, if I count them right.
Well, we had 3 primaries, well, we will have 3 primaries and 1 general election during the
we-
calendar year.
But we also had library elections, we had village elections.
That's true.
We had school board
Yeah.
elections. I mean,
I bet it's a
people
lot
have to
more
go-
than that, Mark, because because I can tell you tonight, I know East Greenbush Library is having an election. I just found that out. So, and I didn't even know that one. I mean, so I bet there's a lot more than 6 because they're all different dates around the state for local kind of
People
issues.
just get tired. They're like every other month they got
That's a good point.
another voting.
Right.
Can't we do something or do you think this is a good thing?
No, we have, well, we haven't worked on the local consolidation of elections as much, but one of our positions, and that's what I did bring you,
Okay.
because one of the other things, I told you voter services is one of the things we do. Another thing at the state level that we do is lobby on certain issues.
Right.
But we are a membership organization, so our members have to study the issues and decide what positions we're going to have. I can't just say, oh, that sounds like a good bill, I'm going to go up and lobby it. And my members even have to tell me, this is what we want you to go lobby mostly, or...
So your lobbyist doesn't choose it either? And
No,
say-
it's
does
all
she
based on-
recommend?
Well, we can recommend to our members,
Right.
but then it's almost a 2-year process usually to change or come up with a new position, because we can recommend, but then it has to go to our convention, our
Right.
delegates have to agree to even study it.
Right.
And then we create study groups around the state, and each of the local leagues would have a study group. We would give them all the same questions on kind of, would you want the position to be this way or that way? And they all have membership meetings and get what we call consensus on those. It comes back to the state league. We try and merge it all together, and then the board would adopt a new position or a changed position.
One thing for the voter, I know I've heard it's a little bit of an issue. I mean, few people have raised it. I don't think it's a major issue. Is voter ID. They're just saying that you go there and you say, well, this is my name. Okay, good enough. And they just say for everything else, you know, just to get on a plane, you have to show your passport and your driver's license. And here again, one of the major functions of America is voting. And here, okay, here I am. Okay, good enough. Would you be for?
No, we are not in favor of voter ID. And I can tell you, election law reform is one of our main topics that we lobby
Right,
on, because we think in New York State they do make it incredibly hard for people to go vote. In many other states it's much easier to vote, and I can tell you the amount of fraud in this country, election fraud, is less than 1%. So everyone's all worried, oh, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. There isn't really the fraud going on. People aren't doing that. And so we're not as concerned about that. We would rather make it easier so that 28% that's only voting would rise and actually come out and vote. So there are lots of things. Now, the voter ID nationwide, the league has been a part of those lawsuits against the voter ID in Texas, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and we've won all of those because we don't want to make it harder to vote. It tends to be, when you require those IDs, it tends to be in the metropolitan, the big city areas, harder for people to vote because they don't necessarily have a driver's license. It's harder for them to get an actual photo ID. So we do not recommend that.
DMV has the non-driver ID.
But it's not that easy in New York City for everyone to go get an ID.
And then
Now,
they have in New York City, they have that ID card, that special city ID card. I forgot what he calls it.
But if there's no fraud going on, why are we trying to make it harder for people to vote?
When when Bill Powers would tell the story from 1994, when he went around with his executive director, Brendan Quinn, from the state Republican Party, and Bill Powers was the chairman, Brendan was the executive director, and he followed a caravan of buses from one election spot to another election spot, and he eventually put his car in front of the buses and said, "You voted enough today. You're not voting anymore.
I can't answer on
I'm
that.
just saying.
I have no idea on that.
He caught them, and he was saying there is, and I'll tell you, in the city of Albany, there used to be. Someone would tell me with the lever.
You lost your mic.
Okay. With the. If I say anything, it's not going to come out. So I'm not saying
Can't be held against you then.
Okay. So and in the city of Albany, when they had the lever machines, the levers, the poll watchers and poll workers would listen at the curtain, and the Democrat levers would click louder than the Republican levers. and people would congratulate people when they came out of the booth to,
Okay.
of how they voted.
Well, first I'd say, you started that by saying it used to be.
I know, well, that's
So
exactly.
let's
because we don't
talk
have-
about now, and I'm telling you, there's less than 1% nationwide of ballot fraud. So let's deal with that. Why would you make it harder when we're already having trouble getting people to come to the ballot? We want to make the ballot easier to read. It's incredibly hard, especially down in New York City. It should be a required size font across the state. There are all kinds of ways, and I can also tell you in 37 states they now have early voting so that people
That's-
can vote at different times.
Right.
It can be a week before the election. There's voting that's going to start at the end of this month
Right.
in certain
The-
states. Then we have 27.
And I just wanted to mention to you, I'm sorry, that Mario Cuomo, when he was governor,
Mm-hmm.
he said, why do we have to have
One day.
not just one day, but the polling booth in one place?
Okay.
Why can't we drive around like a library would drive, a library bus, and drive around in a voting bus and let people
Well, let
know,
me tell
vote?
you a couple other
Mobile-
things.
mobile
27
voting.
states have no excuse absentee ballot. So basically, anyone could say, I can't get to the polls and get an absentee ballot. We still have, you have to say why you can't get to the polls
In New York State.
in New York State.
That's right.
So also, 3 states.
Isn't that good to say, that you need to say?
Why? Why? You're making it harder for people to vote. Because I get calls from some older people, I don't want to say that I'm going to be in the hospital. I don't want anyone to know I'm going to be in the hospital. I'm going to be away. I don't want my neighbors to know that I'm away, or anyone to know that I'm away. So people are hesitant to do the absentee ballot application because they have to say why they're asking for it. 3 states have mail-in ballots available to everybody. In Oregon, actually, there are no polling places anymore. Everything is done by mail-in ballots.
Okay.
In Washington, it's a mix. Now, in Colorado, and on our website, you'll see, we joined with some other groups, Common Cause, Citizen Union, NYPIRG, and some others, and brought a couple of election officials from the state of Colorado in and to the Rockefeller Institute and had a panel discussion. They send out a ballot to everyone. Then they have, you know how the mailboxes around on street corners? They have ballot boxes on street corners. So you could put your ballot right in there. The other thing they allow is you're not assigned a polling place. They have what they call voting centers. So you would have to be still within your county. But say you work just outside your county line, but you live at the south end or something, and you're working just at the north end. You could just come over to the closest voting center as long as you get into your county and vote
That
there.
makes sense. Yeah.
So all of those make it easier for people to
Okay.
vote instead of harder.
Another one.
So you have some really good ideas,
Yes.
but there's still, I had a friend of mine from Long Island who moved away, and then he just happened to come back on around election day, and he went with a friend of his to the voting booth.
Right.
And he found that all 6 of his family members had voted, and when he looked at the book, and they had voted, even though they weren't even in the state, because they didn't take them off the books.
Well,
and
did they
someone-
vote or were they on the books?
They were on the books, and someone voted in their
Well, he
place,
should-
knowing that they were not
Well, he
there.
should alert the Board of
He
Elections
did,
about that.
But how many years? I mean, they were gone for 10 years. How many times did someone else know that they moved and kept the names
Well,
on the books?
they must be good
and
at
then
signing their signature.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Well,
just
there's
it's
2
really
points.
a shame.
Saying now I heard another way to make it easier, which he didn't mention, is everybody has a computer at home. I mean, everybody, but I'm sure a great majority of people do. And just, again, some way or another.
Can you secure a vote?
We
Yeah, that's what I'm
we
saying,
have
secure.
not endorsed the idea of internet or online voting yet. We think there's too much that still needs to be researched before we could say that would be something. But we think it should be explored. But there are all these other ways that would make it so
Right.
much easier, and we think that would increase voter participation rates.
No,
But
you do have
but
good
the
ideas,
system
yeah.
right now works for those who are in the legislature. So they don't want to change it and make it easier because they fear they will not be reelected if more people vote.
What was the 53%?
53% was in the 2012 general
2012
election. So that's the
general
last
election?
presidential.
That's 53% of New Yorkers went to the polls?
Of eligible voters.
Went to the polls? We
And
had
voted.
over half?
Yeah.
in 2012. That's just
The
like-
presidential elections brings out more people, which
Yeah,
is
but-
kind of funny because people actually, your local elections are really more important, have more of an
Right.
impact on your life and what's going on than the presidential, but the presidential is always more
News,
exciting.
yeah. But no, there's another thing, about, I have heard, is just that, that they didn't even like in the races, right, it's 5 o'clock PM on a given day,
Uh-huh.
and candidate X is 1% of the vote came in, and he's winning, and they just say, well, they're kind of prejudiced. California just started, it's noon or
Yeah, but they don't
whatever.
do
Well, the
that
media
anymore
has
now.
stopped
They don't-
doing
they're
that.
not allowed.
Yeah.
1980, I think they
They
stopped.
stopped doing
With
it.
Oh, I don't know.
Reagan-
Was it that long?
when
I'm not
Reagan-
sure of when, but
well,
yeah.
I'll tell you why I know this, because I was working in the college radio station, Election Night College Network, and I created this network of 41 college radio stations around the country.
Oh, okay.
And we were feeding stories out, and other stations around the country were feeding us stories, and we were trading these stories. And all of a sudden, it was this landslide victory for Reagan over Carter. And we were done at like 9:15.
Yeah. But they were still
California
voting.
was
Right.
still voting,
Yeah.
and they called it. And then after that, the elections.
Was it
They
news
do their
anymore.
projections
Said no
now
more,
on
yeah.
exit polling.
Yeah, that's right.
They have people at different
Yeah.
polls that they think are kind of,
Key.
or samples
Right.
of what the rest would be like. And so they do it through that. But technically, they are not
Because
reporting.
that's why I say the early ones, 3 days ahead of time, well, in Oregon or whatever state.
No,
you
they
were
will. They do
mentioning.
not count any of those. In early voting, they still don't count them until the night of election.
right, that's
But
good.
more importantly, think of the ones that, I can't tell you which states there are, but there's a couple of states that are starting this month, as we said. What if something big happens in October?
Yeah.
This seems a
scandal.
little bit
Yeah,
early.
yeah.
I think, a week or two would be great.
Okay.
But in New York State, you have to even be registered 25 days
Right.
before the election.
So what do you make of this Long Island congressional race?
The congressional third district?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Can you-
happened? Tell us about it.
Well, I'm not
Inform
sure
us.
how
You
much
both know, and I don't
Yeah.
know, and
want
I'm
to
sure our
talk
viewers
about,
don't know.
because there's this State Senator Jack Martins who's running for Congress. Steve Israel retired.
Right.
He was the incumbent. And there's another guy, Flip Pidot, if I pronounced that right.
Yeah, something
And Pidot. And Flip is flipping out over the fact that
Well-
Jack Martins is trying to is trying to move the election date.
Well, what happened
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, please,
that-
fill
okay,
me in, yeah.
They both submitted petitions for the June primary. Remember, the
Right.
congressional primaries were
Right.
held in June.
Right.
And that's what, going back to what we were talking about quite a while ago, we're trying to move the congressional and our state primary to one, so that they would all be in June. We wouldn't have this election next week.
Okay.
That's how we're trying to consolidate the primary,
Okay.
so at the state level. But anyway, so in June, they submitted petitions, and Martins challenged the other person, Pidot's petitions.
yeah.
And so the Board of Elections said, yes, his petitions are not valid, and so they didn't need a primary, because Martins was the only candidate. Since then, it's been appealed, and the court has said, yes, those petitions were good. So the court said that October 6th, he has set October 6th as a primary date now, just for those two. But the regular election is still November 8th.
Right.
And so Martins now has gone to court saying that's not enough time between the primary and the election day for the overseas and military to get the ballot based on the results of the primary. So he wants to move the general election
To
for just
December.
that one race
Right.
to December. Now, we don't think that'll happen. I think, I don't think it will be very, very unlikely that they would move the general election.
you
It's only
would-
happened once before, I
But
guess.
would you support?
No, we think it should stay the way it
stay
is
where
now,
it is.
because the Board of Elections has assured us that they would overnight ballots to overseas or military after
That's-
that.
that's money.
It is money, but it's much easier than having a whole nother election in
Is it?
December. Oh, yes,
Well, it
yeah.
wouldn't be, it'd be a whole other election, because you have the state and the assembly.
No, it would just be that one race.
Yeah, but you'd still have on election day,
Yes,
say,
yes.
state senate and assembly.
presidential.
And then you'd have another election that would have to be a
Yes.
month later.
Yes.
I mean, these boards of election,
Right.
the people who work there
Right.
would go nuts.
Right.
Because, again, isn't there a time when the electoral college meets in December? also for the
Yes, and I
president?
don't know the date of that. I didn't look
But
that up.
it's-
I forgot.
it's early December.
Right,
It's still
right.
in the-
But
yeah.
that wouldn't have to do with that congressional race,
Yeah,
because
but
that
it's a
election would
federal-
be in
It's still a
November.
federal
Right.
race, and, you know,
Right.
who knows
But-
if any of those are electors. They
But so
either-
our local
yeah.
league has
yeah.
organized a
Okay.
candidate forum down there
Okay.
before this primary. But
Right.
Martin's is saying he's waiting until the court case is decided before he'll agree to
Yeah.
be it. So we're trying to
So
put
they're not
pressure.
even talking about the issue, they're talking
No,
about...
they're talking about procedural.
The procedural stuff, which
Right.
really probably irks the league, because
Right.
the league likes to talk about issues.
Right,
Okay, so issue specialists you
yes,
have.
yes.
And I'm just wondering, you know, education, finance
Yes.
is one, energy, agriculture, and the environment,
Yes,
make Great Lakes, judicial, pay equity, reproductive choices, transportation. You know, are all of these, I mean, agriculture concerned to the league? I mean.
yes, yes.
Energy, the
To a
environment?
point, if you remember what I said about our members driving
Yeah.
what we lobby.
Uh-huh.
So that's what, in here, what we do, and this is from last year, so
Right,
we'll do a
uh-huh.
new one in January
Sure.
as the new legislative session.
Sure.
In here, we try and give a summary of the issues that we think might be discussed in the legislature
Uh-huh.
and what our positions would be on that. So it's a little bit of a guessing game, but we know what some of the hot issues are. So
Do you
it's
have-
not necessarily everything. Obviously, we have a position, you know, a couple of positions that there's no way they're going to be discussed in the legislature. The other thing is our national league has positions as well, and we can act on them as well.
So do you have members in the legislature who just genuflect to the League of Women Voters, and whatever they say, that's how,
Absolutely not.
because there are people who will do it for the environment, environmental advocates support this or
Right.
oppose this, I'm going along with them on
Well,
that bill, that's it.
you know, one thing that we haven't mentioned too
Yeah.
here, which is so important, is that the league is totally nonpartisan.
Exactly.
We never support any candidates
Right.
or political parties. Now, and so to even ask that question, I'm not sure if I could even say there's a legislator who would agree with all our positions.
Oh, okay.
We don't
You
keep
don't do a
track like
scorecard.
that.
You don't do a scorecard.
No, because we want
You
to stay
could.
nonpartisan.
But
Right.
you could do a scorecard as long as you include
That's true.
everyone.
That's true.
There's
But
nothing
But what I
biased
will
about
say
that, yeah.
is we have a couple of members in the legislature who started in the league,
That's
and
what I
we're
was gonna
local
ask you.
league presidents.
I was gonna ask you.
Amy Paulin,
Yeah.
Sandy Galiff,
Uh-huh.
Susie Oppenheimer,
Oh,
all of
well,
them, yeah, she's
yeah.
retired.
Okay.
But all of them started in the league, and many of the local league, of the legislators, if they weren't before, are now members of the league,
Okay.
men and women. And, you know, a lot of them look to us when they're looking for information, or
Yeah.
they know what our issues are too.
Sure.
So they'll call us and ask us, would you do a memo, or would you help us,
Yeah.
you know, put together coalitions on it?
Have you ever sat in a board of elections when the ballots came in and you had to justify, you know, there was like ballots that are contested?
No, I
And
have
you-
not sat in on
Okay,
this.
I've done that.
Mhm.
And I gotta tell you, there are people who do not know how to fill out a ballot.
That's right. Well,
And
as I
it
said,
is
we
so-
make it hard.
And I was there, and I was saying, okay, this one gets tossed because he didn't fill this out right. Well, this is a military ballot. Are you sure that you want to throw out a military vote?
Right.
They're over there fighting for our country, and their vote's not going to count?
Well,
I said, excuse me, they're over there fighting for our country, and they can't fill out a ballot? I'm scared now.
Well, I will admit, one of the first times I went in to vote for one of the primaries, and with the new ballot that we have, where you fill in the little circles and then it goes in the machine. And I filled it out, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I did it wrong. So I knew going in that this was a new ballot,
You
and it
voted
was
for people
tricky.
you didn't want?
No, they gave me a new ballot.
Oh,
You know,
they did?
if you realize that, yes, they'll give you a new ballot, and then that one gets voided and destroyed.
I think a few more questions. We only have a few more minutes.
Oh,
Okay.
take your
But
time.
I could talk forever, but in any case,
This
the
is very
electronic voting, you know, again, these are issues I heard, and that's why I'm throwing out to you, but they're worried about fraud, and that's what even ticked my mind when you said electronic. It's
Okay.
just even sometimes, when you pay your bill
Right.
online, thank you, you just paid $100 and
Yep.
it will be deducted. And people told me this, they throw it in and they don't even say, thank you, you have voted, you're a great American citizen.
Well, that's not true. When you put it in the machine, it will say your vote has been counted. If you undervote, it will usually tell you, spit it back and say, you missed some races. Do you want to
Really?
correct it?
Yes.
And then it will go back in. Now, the other thing I'll just mention quickly, because I know we're
No,
running
no,
out of
you're
time.
fine.
Okay. That one of the things that the league was very instrumental in when we were adopting these new voting machines back in the mid 2000s.
Yes.
One of the things that we were insistent on is that there was a paper trail.
Uh-huh.
And you will hear in other states that went to this new kind of balloting that they don't have a paper trail. And that was part of the problem with the lever machines. You only had it in the back. Now, if the race is too close, for instance, a couple of years ago, the Senate race just south of here was so close, they have all the ballots in that machine. They pull them out and they can manually count them.
That's
So
good.
that was one of the things that the league was in.
Amador suit,
Yes, exactly. And that was one of the things that the league was very instrumental in really requiring. We said that is a must. We have to be able to do a recount if we needed to.
So I want to make an offer to you now, because you host debates. The
Yes.
league hosts debates.
Yes, we do.
You have carte blanche to use this studio for your
Oh.
debates. And you can host them here, have them here, whether you want this desk or you want some other format, whatever you want, it's all yours. Please, use the studio. We would like for you to use
Well,
the
thank
studio.
you. Let me make one last pitch then.
Absolutely.
We have an electronic online voter guide. It is called vote411.org. This is the flyer on it. If people go to that website and put in your address, it will come up with the races that you will be voting on
Let's
and
try
the
to get a
candidates
close-up of this, yeah.
and the candidates that you will have a choice between, and hopefully information about the candidates. We're dependent on the candidates putting in that information. But also on that website, it lists all of the candidate forums, candidate debates that we have done and we are doing. So people can go and see if there's a forum in their area for one of the races that they'll be voting on. And for instance, the League in Saratoga has videotaped a number of their candidate forums in the last month, and those are now posted on that website
Excellent.
as well. So people can go at any time and watch the debate at their leisure on that website.
And I'm available to be a moderator.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
That was going to be my last question, because my wife gets frustrated. She's an educated woman, and she says, I'm not going to this judge, that judge. Who knows what I'm voting? I'm not just going to go there and
Right.
vote. What kind of person am I?
Right.
So she's always gets frustrated. So I'll go to the women's, League of Voting.
The one thing I can tell you is right now it's focused on the primary
Yeah,
races,
sure.
obviously. So if you're looking for the general election information,
wait a
wait
little bit.
until the end of September. It's about October 3rd, I think we're going to go live
Got a
with the
month to
general.
figure it out.
Yeah, we have
All
to
right,
get
thank you
all
very
of them.
much. I think that's like really the bedrock of the whole American
Laura, it
is
was wonderful having
election.
you here
Well,
as
thank
a
you.
guest. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much. It's
much.
very entertaining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Continued success.
Thank you.